Hello everybody, and thank you. It's a pleasure seeing you out here today. It's well appreciated. Your presence out here is well appreciated. I would like to extend my greetings in both my native language, my mother tongue, as well as in French, based on the fact that this country is one of multiculturalism and language. So I'm going to tell you stories that are related to language, that are based on language. So I'll start by greeting in my mother tongue, and then I will greet in French. So mi family, and I thank you for coming. When I come back to me, I'm glad for seeing her. And I remember the last time we mosquito and boss now were in my limp. And I remember that story there when he asked all the people. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to translate. The story is going to be short and greeting. And then they bring all the people there up. And then what happened, they asked for the chief, the Kakatua. And any people then turn to the chief of the town and point and say, "Naina one day, the chief." And the chief says, "See that me?" Say, "Now that Pupuna Wodi." So everybody just keep quiet. So my brother, I know say in Nigeria people and they are well. I welcome in a true salute. I'm glad for seeing her. I know say any somewhere in a day, now one will take place. The Ajekule boss don't come on. But making a no say change in not day. Otherwise I will pay in. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you a personal story about myself. In 1979, is it 1979? 1997, I've already applied for permanent residency in order to immigrate from Sierra Leone, my native land, to Canada. And by 1999, January 1999, the war broke out in Sierra Leone. And I was caught in the war, and I found myself on board a very old ship, including some other people, and we were referred to as refugees. We're having about 600 or more people on board that ship, and we are forced to leave Freetown, Sierra Leone, in order to head to Conakry, Guinea, which is a neighboring sister state to Sierra Leone. We are men, women, and children on board. And by the end of the journey, by the time we arrive in the territorial waters of Guinea, which is a neighboring country, we have already run out of food and water. And we were not allowed to sail into the harbor. The coast guards out there told us to go back to international waters and wait for further instructions. So we slept out at sea. And then the next day they came back and brought us to the harbor and asked us to, well, they only allowed women and children to disembark the ship, and not men. They were very suspicious of the fact that among these men would be rebel fighters. So they sent us back to sea, taking away the women and the children. And then the next day they came for us again, after negotiations were done by United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And they placed us on board trucks that were owned by United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And on board each of these trucks, we were having 2 soldiers guarding every one of these trucks. At the back of this truck, they were sitting there guarding, making sure that nobody would jump out of the truck. So I was sitting closer to 2 of these soldiers. The point I'm trying to bring out here is that of language, especially that of French language. These soldiers are from a French-speaking country. And I had to make them understand that, in actual fact, I'm not supposed to be taken to a refugee camp like my countrymen. We were all bundled in this truck, about 4 trucks in total. I told them that I'm supposed to be going to Accra, Ghana in order to get the Canadian visa, which I've already applied for some time ago. So they got sympathetic, And they told me that, well, once we're in the refugee camp, I should find a way to sneak out of the camp and then wait for them down the road. They would take me back to the capital city. Well, by then, none of my countrymen could understand what I was trying to say in French. So that's how I got out of that trouble. I was taken back to the capital city, and I believe I was saved by the use of the French language. That's one of my stories. And the other story I would like to share with you is related to language as well as multiculturalism, especially in this country. On my arrival here in January 1999, or was it 2001? 2001 in January, at the Toronto Pearson Airport, one of my greatest surprises was to be welcomed by an immigration officer with a turban as headdress, and who spoke to me in both French and English. Well, I knew Canada was already a bilingual country, but the fact that this fellow was having a turban was a cultural shock for me. And then after that, I went out of the airport to catch a taxi cab to take me to my destination. And the fellow that was there as taxi driver was of Pakistani descent. That too was something that gave me second thought. And then he took me to my destination, which was a high-rise building somewhere in Etobicoke in Toronto. And the fellow we met out there in the lobby of this building, the concierge, was of Aboriginal background. Then I began to wonder. And then the other fellow that accommodated me in his house, he was from Africa. And then the next day, I went to Service Canada in order to process my documents. And there again, interestingly enough, I found out that 3 ladies that attended to me, one of them was of Chinese descent, the other one was of Caribbean descent, and the other one was of European descent. And all three of these people were bilingual. They spoke both French and English. That got me interested over the fact that the use of language and multiculturalism in this country is of paramount importance. So ladies and gentlemen, the idea of the use of language and multiculturalism, I believe, should be part of our knowledge in terms of acquiring knowledge, in terms of part of our goal in terms of acquiring knowledge. My mouth is getting drier. Can I have some water, please? Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll talk a little bit about the book now that I've tried to relate language, the use of language, and the importance of multiculturalism in this country. The book of itself is an amazing book. It consists of 12 short stories and 12 illustrations to accompany this book. It's the main revolving theme in this book is that of perseverance in times of adversity. The lesson I want people to learn is that we should try to be hopeful when we think all is lost. If you look at the 12 stories, it's all about characters that got themselves into trouble, and then at the end of the day, they were able to survive based on perseverance and courage. The settings of these 12 stories range across Canada, Ghana, Nigeria, the Gambia, and Kenya. What I was trying to do is to attract audience from these various countries. And the first reading I would like to do is from the book, is from the story, A Suitcase Full of Dried Fish. And it's all about a fellow that was an air steward for about 30 years old, who was traveling to, he quit his job in Sierra Leone and he was traveling to London, England, with a suitcase full of dried fish. But interestingly enough, the aircraft got diverted and they had to be forced to use the bus in order to arrive at their destination, which was Paris. And they found themselves in southern France, where the aircraft was diverted. So, I will take it from there. The name of the fellow is Fode. And the other name of the character that was closer to Fode was a lady by the name of Zainab. So I read a paragraph from that portion. By the time the coach arrived in Paris, Fode's suitcase full of dried fish was completely infested with maggots. He cursed the bad weather that brought about the flight diversion. Helplessly, he swallowed his disappointment before dumping the suitcase and its rotten contents into the hotel's garbage bin. The next day, looking as bright as a button, Fode boarded a CNCF train that would take him from Paris to the Calais ferry port in northern France. From there, he planned to cross the English Channel to London. Halfway through the train journey, he was intercepted by the immigration officer on board the train. He instructed Fode to discontinue his journey and return to Paris. But why shouldn't I continue? You don't have a visa for France, said the officer with a typical French nasal accent. I am an air steward, and we don't normally have a visa. Well, that's why you should stay within the airport surroundings. Dumbfounded, Fode was now at the mercy of the dismissive-looking officer. We will disembark in Amiens, and I will see you off the train to Paris. In a couple of hours later, Fode found himself at the Hilton Paris Henri Hotel. In situations like this, you remember Zainab used to say, you had better pull your socks up. Disappointed but yet courageous, he frantically made air travel arrangements for the next day. At the Charles de Gaulle Airport, fully dressed in his air steward uniform, he was allowed to board a British Airways aircraft by an immigration officer. He was feeling elated when he finally arrived in London. End of story. Ladies and gentlemen, the next reading is from a story which is entitled Republic of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia in the Creole language means you will learn your lesson the hard way. And the Nigerians would say you go suffer well. So in this case, a group of students demonstrated against the head of state of an imaginary country called Yugoslavia. And then the students were invited into State House, and the head of state was talking to them. The head of state was called Sarkongo Il, and he was 72 years old, and he had been in power for almost 25 years. So the head of state was addressing them this way. Let it be known to every law-abiding citizen that a few weeks ago, before this illegal power, I was even planning to release a bunch of political prisoners. I must warn you that though we have encouraged enlightenment, yet the pen could never be mightier than the sword in this republic. The students turned to look at each other, seemingly alarmed at Sarkongo Il's last statement. A gold-plated clock on the wall solemnly chimed the hour. The university's warden, a retired soldier, stifled a cough. His Excellency continued speaking. So your knowledge should be diverted to more productive exploits rather than slander, libel, and malicious rumor mongering. I would hate to see any of you fine gentlemen join the self-styled rebel group, Revolutionary Justice Army, the so-called RJA, in the quest to oust me from my God-given office. What some of you malcontents fail to realize is that with all my power, wisdom, and profound understanding, I could not, like anybody else, argue against the hand of fate. So you should know by now that my position has been decreed by the Almighty God, and as such, I will sit on this throne until I die. End of story, ladies and gentlemen. So the first story, that of a suitcase full of dry fish, is actually a story about myself. Because I was an air steward for about 4 years with the Sierra Leone Airlines and the Royal Jordanian Airlines. And I was actually the fellow that took the suitcase full of dry fish to Paris, which got rotten on the way. Yeah. And at this point in time, I would like to stress again the idea of multiculturalism and language. French has been one of my favorite subjects, and it has taken me to 14 different countries without ever buying air flight tickets, because I was an air steward, and I was employed as an air steward because of French language. My friend here, Mr. Augustin Mara, and the other people who could understand French, I would like to say merci bien, mes chers amis. Je suis tellement content de t'accueillir ici, de vous voir si nombreux, et soyez la bienvenue. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it as that for the time being. And I would also like to thank all of you and all those that have made this possible.
Talk about this book. This book, a suitcase full of dry fish and other stories. It's his first book, but I know he's going to write a whole lot more books. There will be a whole lot more coming after this. Just before I asked him to come, I took a snapshot into some of the stories in this book. And I said I identify with it, and so also there's a whole lot of Africans or people from different parts of the world who moved to this country. We all have a story to tell. The question is, how are you putting that story together? Or how much does that story mean to you? And how much do you believe that that story could impact the lives of other people? Even just to know. I'll give you an example. I told a friend when I was in the Caribbean, I was in Antigua and Barbuda for 10 years. I told him, I said, do you know that I have 26 siblings? And he was, wow. I said, okay, that's not bad, because I have an uncle who has 164 children. He said, okay, so what other thing about you do I need to know? So people have come from different culture, different backgrounds, and they go through different stages in life. You have a story, but it's not all of us that's so, gifted to put all of these stories together. And that's why I'm excited. And I know that after all of this, my friend, my brother, he's going to inspire me to put my own story together.
A Suitcase Full of Dried Fish is a well-written, encompassing book. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how multicultural it was. Even the characters in it went through so much adversity, whether it's making a move to a new country or trying to find career. So what I took from it is really persevere even in the face of adversity. Just press on towards your career, towards your passion. And it's a light book, it's an easy read, it's so well written, and it speaks to a multitude of people, young and old, all races, and that's why I enjoyed it. There's one book in here called The Nairobi Schoolgirl, and it's funny actually. Mr. Bakar came to me with to ask me, a couple of pointers about the Kenyan culture, what names I should use, what high school. So I like that. I'm obviously biased. That's one of my favorite stories because it's Kenyan. It's about a Kenyan schoolgirl, and I really enjoyed it a lot. It's so well written. I like how I'm proud of how he presented Kenya in this.